Hey guys, my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. So the case that we're going to be going over today is a solved one, but I think it's one that we can learn from, and honestly, this poor girl's story deserves to be heard. It's absolutely terrifying to think about what this poor girl went through and the warning signs that were ignored or overlooked. It's such a frustrating and very preventable case, and it's something that should have never been allowed to escalate the way it did. This case is absolutely horrific and hard to hear, and some of the details are extremely graphic. I don't typically go super into detail, and I'm not really going to go into a lot of detail in this case, but there are specific messages and quotes that I will be reading, and they are a bit disturbing, just as sort of a forewarning to you. So with all of that being said, today we are going to be talking about the case of Kimberly Proctor. Kimberly Proctor was born January 1st, 1992 to her parents Lucy and Fred Proctor in Victoria, British Columbia. They called her Baby New Year because she had such a special birthday. Kimberly was described as kind-hearted, caring, with a passion for animals. She had pet lizards, rabbits, mice, and hamsters, and she absolutely loved cats. Kimberly actually loved cats so much that she wore cat ears to school growing up and would just meow in class. Kim also grew up with ADHD, which made it kind of hard for her to concentrate, and she would kind of panic just trying to get through the swarms of students in school as she walked through the halls. Wearing cat ears and having ADHD made her susceptible to bullying, and she was teased quite a lot during school. From the time that she was pretty young to the time that she was in high school, the bullying never really stopped, so it's something that she had to deal with pretty much all of her life. Her parents tried to medicate her to help her with the ADHD, but in their own words, it just zombied her out. So they didn't like what the meds were doing to her, and so they just decided it was best for her not to be on them. Eventually, when Kimberly reached high school, her parents transferred her to an alternative school called Pacific Secondary so that she could get more individualized attention. Now, the thing with alternative schools is that along with the teens who are going there for reasons like Kim, a lot of troubled kids get sent there as well, whether it be because they got expelled from their public high school or something like that. So a lot of the kids that she was surrounded with were troublemakers, to say the least. One of those troublemakers was a boy named Cruz Wellwood. Cruz Wellwood lived in Langford, British Columbia with his mother. Cruz was a troubled kid with a troubled life. He smoked a lot of pot, he stole money from mailboxes when he was a teen, and his dad was actually a convicted killer. Cruz's father, Robert Deswan, sexually assaulted and murdered a 16-year-old girl and was sentenced to life in prison. So he clearly did not have the best influences growing up. Another one of these troublemakers at Pacific Secondary was Cameron Moffat. Cameron was also from Langford, British Columbia, and he too had ADHD. It was also reported that Cameron had a troubled upbringing as he was sexually molested as a child, and he had actually started jumping out of his bedroom windows until his window was literally barred off. He didn't take well to meds and counseling and started lashing out at home and started self-harming. After a while, he actually brought these outbursts to school when he started carrying a knife around with him. Cameron and Cruz met in 5th grade and became friends over their mutual dislike for their teacher. Cruz was described as the smart one, while Cameron was described as slow. However, the two got along extremely well and carried out their friendship into high school. They would skip school together, they would smoke pot together, they played World of Warcraft together, and got in trouble together. In 2009, Kim had become a part of the boys' friend group. They would all go to the mall together, smoke pot together, and party together. When they weren't all hanging out together, they would be texting each other or chatting online together. At one point, Kim started dating another boy named Zach, who was another friend that her, Cameron, and Cruz all hung out with. However, their relationship only lasted a few months, as a lot of high school relationships do, before Zach broke up with her. Of course, Kim was upset about this, so she would talk to Cameron and Cruz, and they would comfort her. During one of these conversations that Kim and Cameron were having online, Cameron told Kim that that he liked her and said, quote, "There aren't many beautiful things I've seen, but I must say you're one of them." And she replied, "Aw, thanks." However, Kim was more interested in Cruz and thought that dating Cruz might help her get over Zach a little bit easier. She had been talking to Cruz a lot through the course of the two's breakup, and he was a shoulder for her to cry on. After a while, they started to get a lot more comfortable with each other and started telling each other things through online chats that they normally wouldn't tell anyone else. They started sharing their insecurities, their deep, dark secrets with each other. Cruz had told Kim that he felt more open around her. He said, "I can't lie to you. It makes me feel too guilty. Normally I can. You make me feel very honest for some reason." And then Kim responded with, "Haha, thanks, I guess." And then a little face. During another conversation, Kim told Cruz that she just felt like she was short and pudgy, and he told her that she was beautiful the way that she is. During another conversation, Kim had brought up Cruz's old nickname Spaz, but he did not like that one bit. He told her it wasn't a nickname, it was an insult. He said, quote, "I had huge people issues. I do now, but now I know how people work and what makes them tick, so it's easy enough to put on a mask and play pretend." He then told Kim that he could get explosive and violent, and she just replied, "LOL," which I could totally see. How do you really respond to something like that? At that point, she probably just thought he was maybe exaggerating, and she just didn't really know what to say. At one point, Cruz said to Kim, "You're too good, Kim. You trust people way too much." However, behind the scenes, Cameron and Cruz started getting into some pretty dark and twisted things together. They started drinking blood and other bodily fluids just to see what it was like. Witnesses reported hearing Cameron screaming at his family at home, and Cruz was acting out at home to his mother. They started having extremely disturbing sexual fantasies and started going to sadistic porn sites together. During all of this, Kim had no idea that they were doing all this, but as they grew increasingly disturbed, they started bringing that into their conversations with Kim. So at one point, Kim was chatting online with both Cameron and Cruz at the same time, but in separate conversations, if that makes sense. So she was kind of switching back and forth between conversations between each guy. So it gets a little bit confusing as to who is saying what to who, since she's having two conversations at once. So I will try to make it as clear as possible. So during her chat with Cameron, he invited her to a party in his pants and promised a cream-filled lollipop. She then sent a message to Cruz saying, "OMG, he says he has a lollipop that will last all night long. I didn't know they made those." Cruz wrote back to Kim, "I happen to own that brand of lollipop as well." And Kim just replied, "Okay, ... She then wrote back to Cameron, "There is no such lollipop with cream in the middle." And Cameron said in all caps, "You have death urine on you." And then said, "You're going to die next ... And Kim just replied, ... Which, by the way, when reading these messages back and forth, they make a lot of spelling errors, a lot of grammatical errors, things like that. So some things are kind of hard to read because I don't really know exactly what they meant. But I will be putting the text up here just so you know exactly what they're saying. But anyways, Kim then messaged Cruz saying, "Oh, ... What do you want?" So now I'm going to read the messages between Kim and Cruz from that night, since now it was just the two of them chatting. I do want to warn you now that it doesn't really make any sense, at least to me. And again, I'm going to read it with all of the texting lingo and spelling errors and all. Cruz, "What are you doing tomorrow?" Kim, "Nothing other than babysitting at 3 o'clock. Cruz, "I'm bored and was looking for someone to chill with today. I also wanted to apologize." Kim, "Oh?" Cruz, "I have some things I'd rather tell you in person about the entire Zach fiasco." Kim, "This is sudden and I can't help but wonder why." Kim again, "I don't want to talk about Zach ... parenthesis. Cruz, "Zach and I aren't as close as we used to be, but I feel that you deserve an explanation." Cruz sends again, "Don't worry, it's not much." Another message from Cruz. It's more about why Cam, me, and everyone was so mean. Now this message kind of doesn't really make any sense to me, but Kim then said, whatever happened to Kim, you deserve nothing, you kill your rabbit. Ha ha. Cruz, that's what I wanted to talk about. Kim, I gotta say, when I saw your text, I was shocked. Kim sends again, and confused. Cruz, but like I said, I'd rather talk to you in person. I can meet you tomorrow earlier than her babysitting and talk about it over a couple of bowls. Kim, sure. So after this, Kim asked Cruz if he could call her, and he did. However, Cruz added Cameron to the call without telling Kim so that Cameron could listen in. As Kim and Cruz were on the phone, Cruz and Cameron were messaging each other. Again, I'm going to read you the messages between the two, but as a warning, the messages do get pretty disturbing. Cameron, I guess we planned for it, but we will keep our eyes open. Cruz, LOL, this is so funny. Jam a funnel in her, fill her with water. When you're done, pour Drano on her. I'm going to rip her nose ring out and burn it. And then in all caps, he says, burn her flesh. Cameron, I want to get it done. I don't want to wait. Cruz, I'm not killing her right away. Cameron, why not keep her bound and alive? Cruz, that's what I'm going to do, but I need to get her stoned first and possibly seduce her. Cameron, LOL, try quickly. Cruz, I'll say I think I'm going to make some KD when I'm going to attack her. Cruz, I wonder if she's got any money and stuff. I'm gonna take stuff. Damn. Well, I'll take whatever she has. Cruz, want to meet up at 10 at Langford Exchange? So as all of this was going on, Kim messaging the guys back and forth, to her talking to Cruz on the phone, and the two sending those disturbing messages. That same day, Kim actually found out that she was on track to graduate high school that same year. She had also been looking forward to an opportunity to volunteer at the local wild animal rehabilitation center called Wild Ark. She was so excited about graduating high school and preparing for the next chapter in her life. The next morning, March 18th, 2010, Kim's mother got up for work while Kim was still in bed, and she came over to Kim, gave her a kiss, and told her that she loved her and said goodbye before leaving for work. This day, Kim didn't have any classes, so she got to sleep in, and she didn't really have anything to do until 3 o'clock that afternoon when she was going to babysit, then was going to start sewing her graduation dress when she got home from that. However, before babysitting, Kim decided to go see her two friends that she had been chatting with the night before. She got up, threw on her black hoodie with the number 13 on the front, and headed for the Langford bus exchange. At around 10:30 a.m., Kim got off the bus at the stop where Cameron and Cruz met her after going to the store and buying some gasoline. The three of them just chatted and hung out for a bit, then started heading for Cruz's house on Happy Valley Road. Everything seemed pretty normal until Cruz had alerted to Cameron using the code phrase that they had agreed on in the early hours of that morning. The code phrase, I'm going to make some KD, KD being Kraft mac and cheese dinner, was Cameron's signal that they would attack Kim. As soon as they got to the house, they attacked Kim, started kicking her, and bound her hands and ankles together. Cruz stuffed a sock in Kim's mouth and wrapped her mouth in duct tape. They then sexually abused and beat her for hours until she eventually died of suffocation. They then cut her with a knife and did other unspeakably disturbing things to her body before putting her body into a freezer in the garage. So at some point while this was going on, we're not sure whether it was before or after Kim had passed, but Cruz decided to cover his tracks and kind of create an alibi for himself. He actually went on his computer and sent Kim a message online asking her if she was done babysitting yet. As he was messaging Kim, another friend had actually messaged Cruz asking him for advice about his dad, and when Cruz didn't answer, the friend wrote, "Dude, speak," to which Cruz replied 8 minutes later, "Sorry, the freezer was jumping around." That same night, as if what they did to Kim wasn't enough, Cruz texted an ex-girlfriend just hours after they had brutally beaten and murdered Kim, asking her to sneak out and come over to his house. Thank God she said no, that she wouldn't sneak out and she didn't want to come over. She literally saved her own life by saying no. So that next morning, March 19th, Cruz and Cameron put Kim's body into a hockey bag and brought her with as they took the bus to Galloping Goose Trail. When they got there, they dragged her into the woods, went under the bridge, and drenched the bag in gasoline and lit it on fire. While doing this, Cruz took out his phone to send a text, which was a very stupid mistake, but one that I'm glad that he made. Now, of course, as all of this was going on, Kim's mother was sitting at home worried sick about where her daughter was. She said that day that she had called Kim's phone that afternoon and the call went straight to voicemail and she knew something was horribly wrong. At this point, Kim's mother called police to report her missing and her and investigators set out on the search for Kim. But as Kim's family and friends were desperately searching for their loved one, Cruz went home and spent the day with his girlfriend as if nothing had happened. Cameron went out to brunch with his mother and grandmother, who bought him a video game right after. It was absolutely disturbing and appalling how these two young boys could just go on with their lives and act so completely normally after what they did. These behaviors show that there's absolutely something horribly wrong with both of their psychological healths. However, their lives would not go on without incident for long. At around 7 p.m. the same night that Cameron and Cruz had dumped Kim's body, she was found by a group of friends who had been smoking pot under the Galloping Goose Bridge. Kim's remains were charred to the point that she was completely unrecognizable, but dental records confirmed that it was her. The Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police sent out more than 40 officers to investigate the scene. At this point, they had absolutely no idea who could possibly be responsible for this heinous murder. She didn't really have any known enemies, anyone who would want to hurt her so brutally. Family and friends had set up a public memorial page for her on Facebook, which investigators closely monitored. Family and friends started discussing who possibly could have done this to Kim, while police looked into each person that participated. Kim's brutal murder absolutely shook the community and she was all over the news. Cruz was trying to be careful about talking to the wrong person or saying the wrong thing on a platform that was easily tracked. So on March 23rd, in a move that he thought was very smart, he decided to go onto the World of Warcraft chat room where he basically confessed the entire thing to his gamer girlfriend who lived in Halifax, which I think is in Nova Scotia, correct me if I'm wrong. But then he went onto the chat room that he normally used and sent her links to the reports of Kim's murder, and his girlfriend was completely shocked. But she replied back, "I'll always be here, no matter what you do." And then Cruz replied back, "That's why I told you. No matter how things turn out, I'll make it up to you somehow, someday." After this, Cameron also went onto the World of Warcraft chat room to confirm Cruz's story. The girlfriend asked Cameron, "What about her family and friends and all those lives that you ruined?" And Cameron replied back, "No, I don't feel bad for them." She then messaged Cruz again saying, "Just don't ever again." Cruz replied, "I promise, I have no desire to." He then just went on to completely change the subject and said, "I think I'm going to play Pokemon again. I've had Pokemon nostalgia for months." Okay. At the same time as this, Cameron and Cruz were messaging back and forth about the investigation. Cameron sent Cruz articles about the investigation. Cameron said, "A friend sent me this. Pretty sick shit." Cruz replied, "Already saw this on the news." Cameron said, "My dad said to me if they asked me questions at school, not to answer them and ask for a parent." So from this message, I'm just getting that maybe his dad kind of suspected that he did this, or maybe he knew, but he was just trying to help his son, which is completely messed up. After this, Cruz continued to go to school, but he had a bunch of really weird outbursts. Now, when I say weird, I mean it was weird to the students who didn't know what he did. We all know what he did, so we understand why he said the things that I'm about to tell you he said and why he was having these outbursts. But at school, it completely shocked his classmates. So one of Kim's best friends at school, Samantha, had overheard Cruz talking about Kim, and she asked him to stop talking about her because it was still fresh and it was just too painful for her to hear. She told him that she was her best friend and just couldn't handle hearing it, but Cruz just started screaming at her saying, "No one effing cares. She's dead. Who gives a shit?" Another student reported hearing Cruz say, "I'm glad she's dead. I hated her." The boy's anger just started boiling more and more as him and Cameron sent messages back and forth online. While they were talking about the investigation, Cameron wrote to Cruz only about a week after they murdered Kimberly, saying, "Since we killed that bitch, it hasn't been too hard, so we should do it again." However, before long, both Cameron and Cruz were brought in for questioning. They said that they saw Kim that morning, but that she left early to go to school. However, investigators had enough evidence at this point to start monitoring their online activities. Police bugged their homes, tracked their cell phones, and bugged the gazebo at the park where they were known to frequently visit. They analyzed their cell phones, computers, got their Google searches, and gathered transcripts of texts and instant messages that they had sent to each other. Of course, at this point, investigators had a plethora of evidence on Cameron and Cruz, and on Friday, June 18th, 2010, they were arrested for Kim's murder. Of course, police had piles of evidence against them, and there was no way that they were going to get out of this. Cruz chose to stay silent about the entire thing, but Cameron did not. In a 9-hour police interview, after teasing police and refusing to give up any information, Cameron decided to tell police everything.
When that's happening, what's going through your head?
It's like, what the f***?
Oh, yeah. And how do you feel inside?
Yeah, the biggest adrenaline rush you ever have, because it's, what the f***?
Yeah. Okay, let's take a step back. What is that fire trying to hide?
All sorts of stuff.
It'll also be lit to destroy evidence, right?
We destroy evidence. Like, the only thing you can't destroy is damage, like the bones and stuff.
Yeah, you can't destroy that.
But you can't see bruises, all sorts of stuff on there. There's going to be a time and a place one day when this is just going to be so easy to tell.
He's telling you repeatedly to do it.
Okay, I'll just tell you, quote unquote, he says, if I'm going to incriminate myself in this, you have to too. The truth doesn't come in portions. I'm telling you the truth. I'm just not telling you every single little thing that happened down to the tiniest grain of detail that I can come up with my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, there's a lot of really disgusting...
Why can't you bring yourself to talk about that?
Because I can't say.
So Cameron and Cruz pled guilty to first-degree murder charges and indignity to human remains rather than facing a trial and jury. Of course, police had a pile of evidence a mile high against them. They had phone records, text messages, instant messages. But because they were considered minors, Cruz and Cameron's names were kept out of the public, and so were the details of the crime. But Kimberly's parents were not happy with that, and they fought to have every last detail of this case released so that everyone could know what Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat did to their 18-year-old daughter. They fought so hard, and eventually the details were released to the public. Police said that as Cruz and Cameron were on their way to their sentencing hearing, both boys were extremely calm. As they were being transported in the sheriff's van, they were just laughing and talking about the investigation, talking about the questions they were being asked, and about their hair and their shoes, and they were just having a jolly old time without a care in the world. It was absolutely disturbing.
They were really trying to stroke my ego, tell me how smart they think I am, and oh, you're so good at manipulating and things like that.
Really, they just made it seem like I got screwed over, and they're like, we understand, and I'm like, you tell me.
The entire time, I had this expression.
I just laughed at like half the things they said, and just like sat there with a big ass grin on my face.
They're like, remorse. Do you feel any remorse? Any regrets? Any anything inside of you, any remorse, regret, any remorse? Did you feel remorse?
At the trial, the two again seemed completely calm. They weren't worried or anything. Cameron went into the courtroom first, followed by Cruz. It came out that psychologists found Cruz to be a sexual sadist and found that the two are both extremely likely to offend again. Prosecutors argued to sentence them both as adults, and the defense didn't oppose since they thought that they would give the two better access to education and rehabilitation. Kim's parents understandably wanted these boys to die for what they did to their daughter, but Canada does not support the death penalty. Now, normally adults would receive a sentence of life with the possibility of parole after 25 years. If they were sentenced as juveniles, they would have gotten a max of 6 years in prison with 4 years of community service. However, even though Cameron and Cruz were sentenced as adults, the two were originally convicted under the Youth Criminal Act. Because of this, 16-year-old Cruz Wellwood and 17-year-old Cameron Moffett were sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. This was despite the expert opinion that labeled them as sexual deviants with conduct disorder and antisocial behavior who had a high likelihood of doing the same thing again for up to 40 years. So here we are almost 10 years after this heinous and disgusting crime, and both Cameron and Cruz are up for parole next year. The parole board said that both of them are currently up for day parole and will be eligible for full parole in June of 2020. Of course, Kimberly's family is terrified that they will be granted parole and are disturbed of the sheer possibility of parole being granted. Kimberly's father stated that he feels like his family is being re-victimized by the system since they are giving these heinous killers the chance of leaving prison just to go on to do this to another girl and another family. They said that what these boys admitted to doing and the lack of remorse that they show is so horrific alone that this should be enough to keep them behind bars for the rest of their lives. They are going to fight so hard at every single parole application that these men make, and they will not rest until these men are behind bars for the rest of their lives. The family is also fighting for change in the form of new legislation that they believe could have prevented from this happening to Kim. This piece of legislation is called the Safe Care Act, or Kimberly's Law. This law would make it so that at-risk kids with histories of violence or mental illness or addiction will go into treatment before they harm themselves or anyone else. Kimberly's father said that Cameron and Cruz were just taking time bombs who were spiraling out of control while their teachers and peers watched. Both of them exhibited violent behaviors long before they committed this act. Apparently, Cruz had once hit another student with a chain, splitting the child's head open. He had broken another student's nose, and in 2009, he held a knife to his mother's throat. Cameron had once kicked his dog, breaking his paw. And as young as kindergarten, he started hitting and pushing children and was expelled from school for bringing a box cutter to class. Nothing was done. If Kimberly's Law had been in place, this would have prevented it. This law has been proposed multiple times, but it remains on the shelf. British Columbia's Minister of Mental Health and Addiction said that there are a lot of things to consider when forcing children into treatment. She said it's an issue of self-care and requires balancing a lot of rights, which I kind of understand. I understand that you don't want to force children into treatment for no reason, but at the same time, all too often we hear about children or teens or even adults lashing out when there were clear signs that they had violent pasts, violent tendencies, or abusive parents or abusive environments. However, Kimberly's parents have not stopped fighting for this law to be passed even 10 years later. So as of right now, Kimberly does have justice for her murder, but these heinous criminals could be paroled almost exactly a year from now, which is absolutely terrifying. Psychiatric experts agreed that there is little hope for rehabilitation for these men, and there's a high likelihood that they will commit the same crime again after being released. I can't even imagine what this feels like for Kimberly's family, and I know how hard they are fighting to keep these men behind bars. I just think it's incredibly unfortunate that because these sickos were only 16 or 17 years old at the time, that they may not serve the sentence that they deserve and may be free to do this to another hopeless girl or boy. It's unfortunate because if they had only waited a year, they would have been sentenced as adults, and the fact that because they chose to do it when they were just a little bit younger, they knew the difference between right and wrong, so they should be treated as such. They should have been sentenced fully as adults. I know that a lot of people believe that teens should not have to pay the same price as adults for a crime since they're young and they have a long life ahead of them. But I have to ask why? Why do they deserve a second chance at life after viciously taking the life of someone else? Why do they deserve rehabilitation? Why do they deserve to live out the rest of their lives after their victim doesn't get to do so? In my opinion, and I know this might be a little bit controversial, but even if there was a chance for rehabilitation, they don't deserve it. I don't care who you are. If you're old enough to understand what you are doing, which these boys absolutely were, and their messages prove that they were, and you choose to take the life of another human being, you deserve nothing but pain and suffering and being behind bars for the rest of your life. I know that this may be a more extreme view, and some of you may think differently. Some of you think that no matter what, everyone, no matter what they did, deserve a second chance, and I completely understand that, and if that's what you think, no judgment against you, but in my opinion, I just do not think that way. If you take another human life, you don't deserve to live yours the way that you want to. This is a case that we hear about far too often. Teens or young adults who are completely mentally disturbed going on to take the life of one of their peers. Whether they go into a school and cause a mass shooting or plan and execute the murder of a classmate. Most of these people have histories of criminal and violent behaviors before ever committing these crimes, yet nothing is done because they're minors and no one takes it seriously. That is completely unacceptable. If a minor is exhibiting violent behaviors or disturbed thoughts or actions, they should be given some sort of treatment, which I don't even think is that harsh of an idea. I think that if you're a child or you're a minor, or even if you're a young adult who's exhibiting these types of behaviors, some people think that they should just be punished or they should be stopped somehow, but putting them into treatment, I think, is the most humane way of doing it. Give these young adults and teens a healthy way of dealing with their feelings and dealing with these urges. Schools ignore this behavior far too often, and it never ends well. How many times do we need to see these same things happen before schools will take initiative and do something? We need to do a better job at protecting each other from mentally disturbed individuals, and we need to take a step in the right direction to keep them from hurting themselves or others. And that starts with psychological help before they have the chance to harm others. And again, a lot of times these children have histories of harming themselves. We saw that with Cameron. He had a history of self-harm. So if we just saw that and did something about it, it would have prevented him from going on to hurt someone else. I also want to say that I don't want anyone to take what I'm saying the wrong way. I don't think that if you have mental health issues as a teenager or young adult that you are going to go on to hurt someone. But whether you're going to go on to hurt someone or not, you deserve treatment. Even if you're depressed, even if you have self-harm and you're not going to harm someone else, you deserve help. People need to pay attention to teens in school because that's when they're mostly exhibiting these behaviors. Even if they're not going to go on to shoot up a school, even if the most that they're doing is hurting themselves, they still deserve help. This is one of those topics that I can just go on for a very long time, and it's something that gets me pretty heated, as you can tell, so I'll just leave it as that. Now, I want to know what you guys think. I know that I kind of just went on a tangent about my opinion, but do you think that Cruz and Cameron deserve a second chance? Do you think that they should be granted parole because they did technically serve their sentence? Do you think that I'm being too harsh in my judgment? Let me know in the comments below, and don't be afraid to comment just because of the little tangent I went on. I have a very open mind, and I'm very willing to hear what other people think, and if I change my mind, then I change my mind, and I'm open to do so. But anyways, if you like this video, please make sure to leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to follow my Twitter and Instagram. Both will be linked in the description box below. If you have any case suggestions, please feel free to email them to me at RachelShannonCases@gmail.com. All of the cases that I've been covering have been suggestions from you guys, including this one. The email that I was sent about this case, the girl just seemed incredibly passionate and really wanted me to cover this case. So of course I wanted to go ahead and do so, and I take every single suggestion and I put it into a Google Doc, and I just go through and do one case at a time. So again, I do read every single case suggestion that gets sent to me. Don't think that just because I don't reply to your email that I didn't get it, because I do read them. I just don't reply to every email because I get so many. But if there are any cases that you would like to see me cover, feel free to email them to me. But with that, I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.